Motorola just announced a new Razr with a foldable twist.
And we've got everything you need to know about it. Stay tuned for your daily charge.
Welcome to the Daily Charge. It's Thursday, November 14th. I'm Roger Cheng.
And I'm Lauren Routt.
And we've got special guest Ken Yeung from Flipboard. Today we're talking Motorola. Motorola is back in a big way with the new Razr. The phone, which takes its design cues from the original, includes a 6.2-inch foldable display. But unlike the Galaxy Fold or Mate X, this folds down into a smaller device. Now it costs $1,500, and in the US it's an exclusive with Verizon. But you can pre-order the phone here and in Europe late December, with the phone actually coming out in early January. That's the latest product to tap into our nostalgic icons of the past. Ken, I want to throw it to you first. What was your first reaction upon seeing this?
I think for me, and first of all, thanks for having me. Really great to join you guys here. This is actually a phone that I'm really interested to try out. I have no idea why. I mean, as you mentioned, and as you guys have covered, the specs aren't really like a high-end phone that you would get with like an iPhone or the Galaxy S10 or even with the Galaxy Fold. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the nostalgia, as you mentioned. It's the flip. You know, this is the phone that many people have had back in the day. Before smartphones came out. It was very, very popular. I think the first Razr I had was when 4G was starting to roll out on AT&T. Mm-hmm. So this is something that really throws me back, and I'm really interested to see how this actually works out. This is a different form factor from what you get with Samsung and Huawei and everybody else. Interesting to note that there's no 5G on this phone.
Yep.
And also that during Samsung's developer conference last month, they teased that they were working on a clamshell foldable device. So Motorola beat them to the punch, but of course Motorola has that icon of that being the flip phone. So it's a pretty good deal for me.
Absolutely. And look, Ken and I both own a Razr. Lauren, you did not though. So what was your reaction like?
Yeah, I grew up with flip phones, and I used to just go into my mom's room and be like, let me grab her Razr so I could play around with it. And then my classmates also had Razrs, so I come from the generation that's like, I can toss a Razr like anywhere in a field and like it'll be fine. The battery lasts really, really long. So this is actually really exciting for me, just because it takes me back to being a kid and like being able to rely on my phone. Because I feel like now, like, batteries don't really last that long. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like I'm so excited. The nostalgia is really creeping in right now.
And there is something cathartic about being able to, like, hang up on someone by actually flipping a phone, right?
Exactly. You're just like, click, and that's it. I don't have to hang up and wonder if I actually hung up the phone.
All right, so here's some relevant specs. Beyond the 6.2-inch internal display, there is a outside 2.7-inch quick view screen, a 16-megapixel camera, a 2,500 milliamp battery that's actually split between the two halves of the phone, 6 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, and a Snapdragon 700 series processor. So specs aren't exactly top of line. Mm-hmm. There's only the one external camera. There isn't like a telephoto or wide angle camera that you find in an iPhone. Do you think that, and can you kind of address this earlier? I mean, the specs aren't on par with some of the other premium phones, but the price is definitely up there. I think it's on par with a 500 gig iPhone Max, so iPhone 11 Pro Max. So what do you guys think? Is that do you think the lack of some of these high-end features is going to be enough to like dissuade people to buy this thing? Ken, go ahead. You can go first.
Yeah. So look, I think if this was Samsung, if this was Huawei, or even if this was Apple, I would probably be more inclined to pay the $1,500 for this. But the thing that is missing, these are mid-tier. This is not a premium phone. So Motorola doesn't have the necessarily the expertise in terms of the camera or in terms of the software, right? I mean, so this is coming with Android 9, so with Pie. So I think if you look at what you get with the Pixel, you look at what you get with the S10 and the Note and the iPhone, you're going to get a better experience overall. Is $1,500 worth just having the flip aspect? I mean, probably not. I mean, I really wish it was a much lower cost. Because that would actually be worth trying out. But I think this is a hard pill to swallow at $1,500 for a novelty feature as flipping. even though it kind of brings you back, and it's that tactile experience is great.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That price tag is really like
Yeah.
making me like cringe a little bit. But I think when the Razr first came out in 2004, it sold, I think, 130 million units. Don't quote me on that,
No,
but
that's correct. Over 4 years, it did 130 million, and
yeah,
it at the time when it first came out cost $600, which
yeah,
was a crazy high price for a flip phone back then.
exactly.
But the secret to its success really is a weird story. They dropped exclusive black versions of the Razr into the goodie bags of the
Yes,
2005 Academy
yes.
Awards, the
Mm-hmm.
Oscars. All of a sudden, every celebrity had one. Then
Yep.
everyone else had to have one too.
Yeah, and like, come on, we love seeing Paris Hilton with her
Yep.
razor. Like,
Yep.
it's just iconic, and so that price tag bothers me. But I'm just like, more than the nostalgia, just like the fun of it, right?
Right.
Like getting back into enjoying your phone, not just like, okay, like I have a touchscreen and I have an iPhone, but just actually being able to enjoy, like, just feeling like hanging up on your phone, like feeling the numbers, like all of that, and then you also get a touchscreen at the same time. Like, maybe later on we'll get a lower price and we'll get some better specs, but for now, like, I don't know, I'm not too mad.
Yeah. What I'm really hoping for are richer people than me who will buy this phone and support it and
Yes.
really push the development so we do get that lower cost phone for the masses. All right, so let's move on. It's time to find out what you all think. We'll dive in the chat and see if you folks are really on board with the new Razr or if this is all just nostalgic appeal. What do you think it stacks up against the other marquee foldables like the Galaxy Fold or Mate X? BVG, what do you have?
Taking a look at the chat and seeing what everybody's curious about today. First and foremost, from our social post earlier today, Matthew says these flip phones will be a gimmick or fad and fade real fast. Do we think that's the case? The other question is, like, is this really, like, hang on, who said it? Somebody had a really good one. Brian with an IM. This phone is definitely for millennials. Too bad every news site out there says that we're all too poor for them. What is the marketing approach on these? What do you guys take away from this? Is it strictly a gimmick, or could this actually prove to be a good form factor for contemporary flip folding phone usage?
So I think, speaking as a millennial,
Yes.
I definitely think that it can have long-lasting impressions on more than just millennials. I think that right now we see a surge in foldable devices coming out, and some of them still have a few kinks to work out. And I think the same is for the Motorola Razr. I think we'll be looking forward to new specs coming out. We'll be looking to new things, and like, it's just exciting that we get this device that kind of has the nostalgia from before.
Yep.
And then the new technology from today. And I think that's going to take a long time to kind of double down on and fix. But I think, it's a surge that we're seeing. And I don't know, I'm hopeful.
And look, this is interesting because the first foldables that came out, the Mate X and the Fold, both folded outward. They got bigger, so you get more screen. I don't know if everyone really wanted that. So Motorola is taking the opposite approach. And I'm curious to get both your thoughts on this. Like, would you prefer a phone that got smaller, or would you prefer a phone that got bigger?
So I think for me, I think years ago, or maybe even last year, everyone was talking about how phones are getting massively larger. The word phablet just kind of eroded, and now it just became phones. With iPhone and Samsung, their phones getting larger and larger and larger. Now they're launching smaller iterations of their flagship devices. So I think for the case of Motorola, it's just actually a pretty interesting test case for them to see if people want something that can be that has the power of a large screen, but that's not going to necessarily have this giant bulge in their pocket or take up too much space in their bags or purses or jacket pockets or whatever. So being able to make things more compact would be great. Whether or not this is actually going to accelerate the adoption of flips, I don't know. But look, I think right now the market is wide open in terms of what is that form factor. You look at what Microsoft is teasing out for next year with the Surface Duo and Surface Neo. You look at what Samsung's done with the Fold and what they are planning on doing with their clamshell device, and obviously Huawei and now with Motorola Razr. Who knows? I think CES in January is going to unveil some interesting devices, as well as Mobile World Congress come February.
Yeah, definitely. And beyond Samsung experimenting with clamshells, we saw prototypes earlier this year from TCL on flip phone type foldable devices. So they're not the only ones. I think I don't know if it's sort of a trend, but I know companies are looking at that area. So it's not going to die right away. Brian, what else you got?
Oh, a little trip down nostalgia lane from CISA 9311. I had a Motorola flip phone back in the late 90s. I felt like Captain Kirk from Star Trek. Scotty, beam me up.
Yes.
Very compact and cool.
That
I
totally
never had...
captures it, for sure.
All right, okay, so full disclosure. I never had a Motorola Razr, but my girlfriend did have and break 4 of them through
Wow.
college.
Wow.
So I don't know. What do we know anything about the durability on these? Because that was kind of the thing that was a bit notorious about them back in the day. Is like they are as thin as a razor and will snap like a cracker.
No, that's a great question. And I mean, given what happened with the Galaxy Fold, there are a lot of questions about the durability of this device. They say they've taken extra steps. They've reinforced the back of the display with 2 steel plates, similar to what Samsung did with the reinforced Galaxy Fold. And the actual plastic display itself is 5 layers. It's something like 360 microns thick. But that last layer is actually a stainless steel, a micro thin stainless steel plate. And the way it folds, it's actually pretty brilliant. It doesn't fold completely closed. It's kind of got like a teardrop fold curve, so it doesn't create a huge crease. You just can't see it because it's hidden behind the hinge. But the way it folds, it decreases the stress on it that normally would if you actually tried to fold it completely flat. And so there is a bit of I wouldn't say a crease, but when you open it up and you kind of touch the screen, especially the middle of the screen between the steel plates, you could feel it kind of depress a little bit. But generally, this feels like it feels a lot more solid than the other foldable phones. And I've tried pretty much every single foldable phone out there so far.
Hey Roger, how did you when you were holding onto the device? How did you enjoy opening and closing it and using it like a typical Razr back in the day, right? I mean, if you look at the Razr from yesteryear to now, it seems like the traditional flip phone was thinner, was skinnier than this. So obviously now phones these days have to adhere to more like a 5.7, 6.1 inch screen, like in terms of the width of a typical smartphone. So now that the Razr is going to be wider. So how did it feel holding that? Because it was so much. There was something about that whole experience of just being able to flip open a phone with whether you had a Razr or Sidekick or whatever else you had back in the day. Did this bring back any of those type of feelings?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Like we had a bunch of original Razrs on hand when we were trying out the new one, and like going back to it, it was funny how thin and like light it was. I kind of forgot that. And the odd thing is, I talked to some of the Motorola engineers, and they said back when they were designing that original Razr, they weren't convinced that people would buy a phone that wide. And like it's super narrow now by today's standards, but it was actually pretty wide back then. So I was able to flip the old phone back and forth. The new phone, definitely, I mean, it's a very solid construction. I tried to flip it open with one finger or one hand with my thumb, and partly because I guess I was nervous. I didn't want to break this thing. But it was kind of tough. It was the top half of the phone is heavier than you'd expect. There's some stainless steel parts into it, so it's a bit reinforced. So it took a while to kind of like flip it open, but the closing was amazing. Like they added magnets, they had these little bumpers there. Nice. They actually worked on it so it would sound basically the same as when you flip the old Razr. Like they mimicked the sound down, so when it snaps closed, you could hear it. It's a really satisfying click.
So speaking of that, before we move forward, I'm really glad you brought that up because who was it? Kashif says hanging up on that phone was so satisfying.
That was the best. Especially when you were angry, that was the best.
Exactly.
Yeah, you could just be like, bye, not talking to you anymore.
Rage hang up.
We gotta give it to them for replicating the most important experience of all. Because like that's really what it comes down to. Like you can't have a hissy fit with a smartphone now. You're like,
I know, you just sort of hit the touchscreen. Right. It's just not the same.
It's not the same. And I'm also curious, like very quickly, like I know that millennials and I see everyone on the MTA like with their headphones on. So I'm curious, like how was the experience kind of like scrolling through the apps, like choosing like what kind of music you want to listen to, opening YouTube, like how was that? Because I feel like the original Motorola Razr obviously is going to be a little bit different from this. So how was that feeling of navigating the screen and going through apps and whatnot?
No, that's a great question. It's, it's standard Android. I mean, there's some tricks to it, but otherwise, when it's folded open, it feels like a standard Android phone. It's a little bit longer. The aspect ratio is a little bit longer than the normal smartphone, but it works just as well. When you're playing YouTube, that thick chin at the bottom of the phone actually kind of acts as a grip on your one side, so you can kind of hold it, which was, at first we thought it might be distracting, but actually has a pretty useful purpose to it. And really, in terms of music control, the best part was like that quick view screen, the little screen on the front. Actually, you can manipulate, or you can toggle your music, or you can look at your notifications there. You didn't really have to flip open the phone all the time, which I kind of liked.
Yeah. That's a really great feature.
So what about a couple of questions in terms of like the security, right? I mean, in terms of with Android, with most phones now, they have like the fingerprint sensor, or they have Face ID or whatever. This one is there a fingerprint sensor on the Razr? And like, where when you open it, do you then have to authenticate to get into the phone?
That's a great question. It is there is a fingerprint sensor it's implanted in the chin. So you can actually unlock it there. If you don't use the fingerprint sensor, when you unfold it, you basically sign into an Android phone like you normally would, whether it's swipe password or number password. But it works, like I said, it works essentially like like a standard Android phone.
Okay, and then you guys had extensive exclusive interviews with execs over at Motorola.
Yeah.
A slew of coverage came out last night. But I'm curious, as we go down memory lane here, if you remember Nokia, I think it was like earlier last year or sometime before that, they rolled out their I guess let's call it a feature phone, a dumb phone, right?
Yeah.
Basically paying homage to the Matrix, that banana phone, like. And Motorola is kind of bringing an old school back into the new. And when you guys talked to Motorola, how did that come out into play? Like, why did they decide to modernize this iconic phone? When other companies, namely Nokia, is kind of just bringing back a vintage phone. And just kind of sprucing it up a bit.
And look, the Nokia stuff, it's HMD is the startup that makes the Nokia phones now. They're bringing back some of these phones. They're basically the same as the old phones. They didn't update them. A lot of it's publicity. It's just, they made a big splash with the retro phones at Mobile World Congress. So the first time around, so they did again with the Nokia 8810. This one was a little bit different. They were working on foldables first, and the development team kind of worked with different designs. They had about 20 or more than 20 prototypes they worked with. They ended up with one that was this kind of thin clamshell, and then it was that point they decided, oh, it looks a lot like the Razr. Let's do the Razr again.
Let's do it.
So it wasn't like they just set out to make the Razr phone like with a comeback phone. They went foldable first, and then when they realized what they can do, they opted to go with the Razr, because they actually experimented with prototypes that looked a lot like what we saw with the Galaxy Fold. But they ended up with the Razr instead.
Interesting.
Yeah, and just also on that, like this is taking like a different path, but I know that right now we're talking about remakes of movies, TV shows, and all of that. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, how does this fall under that umbrella of like, should we just leave this alone? Should we just like not go after this? Or like, is the nostalgia worth like doubling down on and really focusing on? Because I think I struggle with that as well. Like, I'm like, no, you're ruining it, ketchup on steak. Or is it just like, yes, like I really love this and I want this again?
Well, Ken and I were already nerding out over Disney Plus and all the nostalgic content that was available there.
Yeah.
So I think nostalgia is like alive and well, but I don't know, Ken, what do you think? That's a great question. Like, should we leave some of these icons alone?
And what do you think about ketchup on steak while you're at it?
No.
No, we're not doing that.
No, just no.
Look, bring back the sidekick. That's what we really need.
yes!
Bring back the sidekick. This is the important topic of the day. No, I think everybody's, when you look at these phones, in every year there's always these major product launches that everyone pays attention to. That being Apple, Samsung, and Google. There's other people that will pay attention to the Motorola's, the Huawei's, and the likes, but mostly a lot of the coverage is focused on the top three.
Yeah.
And at the end of each launch, there's always going to be, when you look at phone Twitter, you're going to see people saying, hey, so and so's copying so and so. Oh, this had to do with this. When Apple announced wireless charging support, oh, they're just copying Samsung. Or hey, now they're copying Google, or Google's copying Samsung, and so on and so forth. And at some point, all these premium phones just wind up looking the same, and they're having not as significant of a jump in terms of upgrades. Like you have to wait probably 2 or 3 iterations before you find that next generation phone where you're like, this is actually very different for me, and this has more value to me. Now, what Motorola is hoping for is to kind of go back and say, look, this is, we're giving you pretty much most of what you have on your existing phone, but here's the flip. You love the flip back then. Here we go. We're bringing it back and hoping that will, change, your mind about Motorola. Most people probably don't think of Motorola as much as they do with Samsung and Google and Apple. Now, whether or not bringing back other vintage things, I don't know. It probably couldn't hurt, but well within reason, because at some point, gimmicks just become gimmicks versus actual, Renaissance changes.
Yeah, and it's important to note, like, I think bringing something back, if you don't have the substance to back it up, that's the issue. Like, I brought up in the story the SNES Classic, the NES Classic came back. They were huge hits because they brought back the games you wanted. They kind of got that. But Sony tried to do the same thing with the PlayStation Classic, and that was a huge flop because the games weren't that great, the selection wasn't great, it was overpriced, and so
UI sucked.
Tapping into the nostalgia isn't a guarantee for success.
Right.
All right, we got to really slam through some of these questions because we got some good ones coming in. No, the conversation's been fantastic.
Speed round, let's go.
Yeah, let's try to knock a few of these out. Yo, Srinjoy, where you been, man? We haven't heard from you in 1,000 years. If you were to choose one between Essential's upcoming Project GEM long phone and the Foldable Razr, both pushing the stagnant smartphone form factor, which would you rock as your daily driver?
Ken, do you want to take this one first?
I think I will probably go with Motorola just because that flip aspect is probably something I'm just hung up on. I don't know what the phone will be probably like mediocre at best for me. But look, I think I'll be walking down the street flipping all day long. That's basically
There you go.
Yes, I am 100% with you. I want to open it. I want to hang up on somebody, anybody. I'm here for it, and I will rock it.
You get one, you can call me and hang up on me.
Yes, and then I'll hang up.
I'm the same way. Like I'm not particularly interested in that long phone. It just seems weird. Like practically speaking, I don't know if I want a phone that'll jut out of my pocket.
Yeah, no.
So
talk about gimmicks. That sounds like the absolute epitome of gimmick.
Yeah.
Has anyone invented an app yet that makes like a hang-up sound on your phone? I feel like
I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there is, but if not, it's yours.
Yeah, I'm calling dibs on that one. Okay, we're still rapid fire, trying to get through a few more of these. Kashief says, I came in late. But what's the deal with the box for the Motorola Razr? Apparently, it can be used as its own like speaker amplifier.
Yes,
this has my attention.
Yeah. So it's a hard plastic box, but it's kind of it's sort of been designed so it got like this translucent plastic cap, but when you take it off and you remove part of or half the box, it actually turns into a stand, and it's got little speaker grills at the bottom. So when you put the phone on the stand position and play music, it'll actually slightly amplify. It's not a speaker or anything. It's a cheap stand. I told them that they should have cut out some sort of hole for a wire pass through because you can't actually charge it on that stand. So for me, it's kind of worthless. But it's clear like they were trying to put some thought into the packaging to make that to kind of reinforce the idea that this is a premium phone, despite the fact it doesn't have premium specs.
Yeah.
And to somewhat justify that $1,500 price tag.
That is kind of neat, though.
Yeah. I mean, they clearly put a lot of thought into it, which was nice.
It's like when you would get a box of cereal and you could use it as like a maze, like you had an activity book on the back.
Yes.
Yes.
That is my equivalent.
I also like that the accessory case works as a carry case as well.
Yes.
I'm
yeah.
kind of interested in how that's going to look in my satchel that I carry on the MTA, but that's another thought. And I also like that it has a headphone jack.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It
It doesn't?
It has only a USB-C out, and so but the headphones that come included are USB-C.
Okay.
So.
At least they're still living that dongle life.
Yeah.
Yep.
It comes with a dongle too.
Hey.
Of course it
There
does.
you go. Hey, Google doesn't have a dongle anymore, so
Touche.
can't take it for granted.
Right.
All right, more rapid fire. Rapid fire. Is the battery smaller than the Pixel 4?
I don't know what the Pixel 4 is right off the bat. I'll have to look it up, but it's.
Well, look it up. Rapid fire. Rapid fire.
All right, keep going.
I want to get through. These are
Yeah,
really good
go.
questions today, and we've eaten up a lot of time. We got to let Ken go shortly. Just a couple more minutes. I'm wondering, with this new form factor, when a phone is half open, does it make the top part of the screen more reachable with one hand? So I think he's asking about like the UI layout, the app layout, and how it works with like
If
a partial
it's-
open.
Sorry, if it's half open, like
Yeah.
at an angle.
I don't know. I'm having a hard time differentiating this one. Brian, if you want to go ahead and clarify for us.
I will say, like, if you try to close it, it'll start to slam shut. It doesn't really do
because
like,
of the magnet, there's no
Pac-Man.
partial.
Yeah, it doesn't do like the Pac-Man.
The
or
Pac-Man.
anything. And just to the earlier question, the Pixel 4 has a 2800 milliamp battery. This is, I think, a 2500 one, so it's slightly off. But the Razr has a smaller battery.
Thank you much for that. Matthew Datcher says, I got an email this morning about the new Razr. It looks like a normal phone unfolded, but I love that it folds to a smaller size instead of Samsung's huge folded phone. I feel like, are we going to see Alfred pick up one of these shortly? What's the deal?
I mean, he's not going to spend $1,500 on anything.
That's extremely
no.
true. But if he got one as a gift, I think this is right up Alfred's
He would be
alley,
into
right?
it. I think so. It's
Yeah.
thin, it's retro. I think he would be into that. He's a hipster.
Yeah.
Very much.
He wouldn't cop to that, but he is.
Never admit it.
I think they nailed the fold aspect, but need more innovation from manufacturer. This is a good first step, though. Hopefully they can make a bigger battery as well. That's from Adrian MVP1. What version of Android does the Razr run, and when will it be available in the U.S.? That's from our old buddy Michael Brown.
Android 9, as Ken said earlier, and you can pre-order the phone in the U.S. on December 26th, just through Verizon. Only Verizon has actually a lifetime exclusive here in the U.S. The phone will be available in early January in here as well as in Europe, and I believe it is coming to Asia, Australia, and South America just later. They wouldn't say when.
Yeah. Our general takeaway on this one, I take this from Brian. He says, it sounds like the phone is a good step forward for foldables in general. Samsung can borrow the ideas on this one and make a sturdier Galaxy Fold.
Oh,
No shade, right?
Wow.
rough.
Wow, Brian with an I. Man, that was brutal. Okay, so you guys mentioned this earlier, but Michael Brown brought it up too, and he did beat you to it. So all credit to Michael Brown. The sidekick. When are we going to see the sidekick come back? We've gotten the damn 3310. We got the Razr. Where's my flippin' sidekick?
I don't know. Ken clearly he's emotionally invested in the sidekick, right?
Look,
Yeah.
I'm on T-Mobile. I want the 5G sidekick with like super duper camera and
Yeah.
messaging. Like, I just want it all, really.
No,
And have it support VR. Like, go nuts, T-Mobile. Go nuts, somebody. Make it happen.
You bring up 5G, and you noted correctly that it doesn't use 5G. I asked about why it doesn't have 5G radios in it, because it's going to Verizon, and Verizon's all about the 5G. It's because they put all the components, the antennas and everything, in the chin. That's why it's much thicker. But when they considered using 5G, they just couldn't fit the antennas. So it was a physics problem. They just could not fit the antennas into that phone.
Is that why Jay Leno had such a good career? Because they put all the talent in his chin?
That's right. It's all the
Wow.
components
Thought so.
are in his chin. The humor and everything.
That was a low blow joke on my part, but I feel like I've earned it. I've been behaving lately, so we are extremely over time, but this has been an excellent episode. Ken, thank you for joining us. Lauren, thank you for joining us. We got to do a little shameless self-promotion. Coming up this afternoon on our parent station, CNET, youtube.com/CNET, you can join us for a live battery test for the Apple AirPods, and we're doing it with all the gimmicks in place. We're doing our own lo-fi hip-hop beats to test your AirPods 2 station. Join us at 1:30 p.m. over at youtube.com/CNET. and we'll be doing a full test start to finish at 100%, running the AirPods through a binaural microphone so you can hear what they hear, and just going to see and prove how long of a listening time you have with noise canceling on. So we hope to see you there. Roger, any last words? Thank you again to Ken for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ken,
Making
for joining
time.
us. When
thank you.
the first I hear, whenever I hear about the sidekick coming back, you'll be the first person I call.
Oh, thank you. I want the review unit. That's all I'm saying.
We got you.
We got you, Ken.
All right, everybody have a great weekend. It's been a fantastic week. Roger.
Yeah, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you can join us here live weekday mornings. And if you get the chance, check out the links below to learn more about today's topics. Feel free to subscribe to our audio podcasts that are on every platform ever. For the Daily Charge, I'm Roger Cheng.
And I'm Lauren Routt.
Thanks for joining us.
Can't get enough? Check out the Daily Supercharge, our extended post show with special features, audience Q&A, and in-depth reviews. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.